school board of Duval County School District is now convened in an emergency board meeting. I wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone present. The Duval County School Board is here to set policy for the district that will improve student achievement and address other business items that require vote of the board. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. It is not the role of the board to make managerial or operational decisions. The board has policies and procedures in place to assist the superintendent in resolving management and operational issues. As a show of courtesy and respect to each other, we ask that all mobile phones be turned off and that no flash photography be used during the meeting. For those wishing to address the board during our comments from the audience portion of the board meeting, please note that we only accept the speaker cards until 9:00 a.m. Thank you for taking the time to join us and for your interest in the operation of the Duval County School District. This emergency meeting is called in accordance with School Board Policy 2.26 based on the determination that urgent public matter requires a discussion and action by the board. Approval of board members via interactive telephone systems. That the Duval County School Board approve the participation of board members Elizabeth Anderson and Darrell Willie via interactive telephone system. Is there a vote? Moved by board member Ashley Smith Juarez. Second by board member Charlotte Joyce. Any discussion? If not, I call for your vote.
Aye.
Because we can't vote that way, do
Yeah,
we? No?
we're not voting on
Should be coming.
I know,
it. It's coming up.
yes. We just take a hand vote.
I apologize. You came on too late. You're not doing verbal.
Do a verbal, do a hand vote.
No,
All right.
no.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Like action, you approve the item to allow for interactive telephone system to be installed. 5-0. Thank you. Now we have to wait till we get those two in the phone. Is that correct?
Can we check, are they on the phone now? They're on the phone now, can we check?
All right. Board member,
You can hear it.
Vice Chair Anderson, are you there?
Good morning.
Board member Willie, are you there?
Here present.
Okay. We have 7 present, 2 by phone. Approval of the March 16, 2020 agenda, that the Duval County School Board approve the March 16, 2020 agenda as submitted on March 14, 2020.
Move
Yeah.
Adam.
Moved by Ashley
Second.
Smith Whiteware, second by
Hershey.
Board member Hershey. Any discussion?
Chairman Jones,
Yes.
it needs to be noted that the emergency item waiver of section 2C of school board policy, it should say 6.47, work year and work day, but on your agenda it says 7.47. It says that on mine. But
We need to correct that. Okay, we'll correct that when we get to that item.
yes, I just wanted it on the record
Okay.
that
Thank
it's
you.
6.47.
All in favor, I call for your vote.
One more note is
Yes.
that that item is not reflected on the agenda that's, when you click on agenda,
Mhm.
so we want to revise the, okay.
Need to revise the agenda that shows up on the
Yeah, when you click on the board meeting agenda, it doesn't reflect that item.
We have a motion, a second, on the March 16, 2020 agenda. I call for your vote.
I think we're just doing hands, aren't we?
So we just do hands again.
We're ready to vote. Can we take a voice vote to approve the agenda? Would you take a voice vote to approve the
Okay.
agenda, please?
All those in favor of approving the March 16, 2020 agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Aye.
7-0.
7-0 to approve the agenda. Public comments, we have no speaker cards that I'm aware of, so we will omit that portion. Discussion agenda. Sales tax update regarding the statutes of the surtax. Ms. Moran is here. Ms. Moran, would you explain where we are? Thank you this morning for being here.
Certainly, it's my pleasure to be here. Audrey Moran, one of your attorneys in your case against the city of Jacksonville in an effort to get the tax referendum on the ballot. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling the special meeting this morning and for each of you being present so we can bring you up to speed on what's happening. You will recall on February 24th of 2020, you met and this board unanimously approved a stipulation for settlement to present to the City Council in an effort to resolve the pending litigation and get the tax referendum before the voters in November of 2020. There were three key provisions in that stipulation for settlement that bring us together today. Number one, it was required in the stipulation for settlement that the City Council would adopt and enact legislation within 30 days of receiving that stipulation for settlement. The second key provision is that if there were any state law changes while the stipulation for settlement was pending, that the parties would work together, and the words we used in the stipulation for settlement were, would forthwith come forward with any changes so that we could continue to work to get this tax referendum on the ballot. This past weekend, the legislature did pass legislation that would allow charter schools to participate in funding if a tax referendum were passed. That legislation takes effect July 1st of 2020, which would affect our November 2020 referendum. The third part of the stipulation for settlement that's critically important is we specifically say in there that time is of the essence. As you know, there's much work to be done prior to the referendum coming to the voters. And just getting it on the ballot is one step in that process. And so we want to make sure we have enough time to do everything that needs to be done so that in fact the voters can vote in November of 2020. Approving the resolution that is before you today is necessary to comply with the state law that now allows charter schools to participate and to comply with the stipulation for settlement that is before the City Council. City Council President Scott Wilson has announced that he is suspending all committee meetings and all City Council meetings until April, which puts us beyond the 30-day deadline in the stipulation for settlement. However, he has called a special meeting of the City Council today to discuss, my understanding is the agenda includes to discuss the coronavirus situation, to discuss and potentially approve JEA board members so that board can be in place to conduct the business of JEA. And we have requested that this stipulation for settlement also be on the agenda because time is of the essence and is equally important as to the JEA board getting into place. So we have asked the chair to call this meeting today so that you can see the revised resolution that simply revises to put us in compliance with state law. Everything else is the same, and allow it to get before the city council this morning at 11:30 so that we can move forward to get this tax referendum before the people of Jacksonville. And I'm happy to entertain your questions.
Ms. Moran, the ability to extend the deadline, that was, the attorneys did not have the ability to do that.
We do not.
Okay.
We do not. The stipulation for settlement, which you approved, specifically sets forth a timeline for this to be passed, and this is the only stipulation for settlement in place.
And that's the reason for the emergency meeting, is that the attorneys do not have the ability to extend the deadline. Only this board can do that. And as Ms. Moran pointed out, time is of the essence. We gave them a 30-day deadline. I spoke to Council President Scott Wilson and to the mayor Saturday after we spoke, and explained to them that we would be meeting today in emergency session to bring this to them today at the 11:30 meeting. Scott Wilson said that he would talk with his staff and add it to the agenda unless there's an issue. He has not called me back, so I assume it will be added to the agenda today. And so if they cancel the meetings this week, that means the council meeting of Tuesday of next week would be canceled. So they won't be able to take this item up until the second Tuesday, at the earliest, the second Tuesday in April, which exceeds the deadline of 30 days that was set in the original resolution. Okay, any questions?
I have a question. I know in our original referendum that was submitted in the summer or in the spring, it had language in there specifically talking about schools being built to SREF standards and changing that language. In the document that we have before us, could we just have it read what the new how that reads, so we know the specific changes and if that language is still in there or what has been changed?
Karen, can you help with that?
Certainly. Good morning, everyone. Through the chair to Board Member Hershey and to the board members, good morning. I have passed out, and unfortunately for those participating by phone, unless it can be emailed to them, two documents. One is a clean copy of the revised resolution, but to facilitate your review, the second stapled document shows the strike-throughs and the underlines of the changes compared to your prior adopted May 2019 resolution. Specifically to Board Member Hershey's question, that language regarding SREF was in Exhibit A, the plan. It is taken out. It is deleted altogether because the school board presently must comply, and now that the legislature has adopted changes to the sales surtax statute, providing that school boards must share on a proportionate basis with charter schools, and sets forth charter schools' eligibility and sets forth charter schools' allowable uses. All of those changes have been woven into the document, both in the resolution itself, in the ballot summary language, again within the 75-word limit. That was challenging, and then in Exhibit A, the plan. And your specific question, Board Member Hershey, related to Exhibit A, the plan.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
I have a quick question. This is Darrell Willie. Wondering about if we were to extend that deadline, knowing that there's just so many unknowns about the length of this sort of postponement of meetings on the city council side. I know time is of the essence, but do we lock ourselves into a date and have to come back and do this again? Or what would be the recommendation from sort of our legal counsels or other folks who are sitting around the table today?
Our request today is that you approve the new resolution that's before you so we can get that to the city council today and they can act on it. You're right, these are unprecedented times. However, we do know that the timeline for getting this on the ballot is upon us, and we need to continue to proceed forthwith. And that's why the special meeting of city council was called today, for actions that are time sensitive and critically important to the welfare of our community. We believe this certainly fits within that description.
Oh, I like that. I So if we do that and then approve it today, if that doesn't happen at today's meeting, we would have to come back and have another meeting. Am I accurate in saying that?
We would not have to have another meeting to provide a new resolution. This resolution is compliant with state law, and so that's why we've brought that before you today.
Even with the 30-day window, though, like that's what I'm sort of speaking to, the 30-day window.
Well, if they approve it today, they meet the requirements of this 30-day limit. Time is of the essence.
No, that's what I'm saying. If they don't get it to it today, don't have enough people to vote on it today or something along those lines, would we have to then come back as a board and then write another resolution, or is there language we can put in there to extend that time for them?
School Board Member Willie, if the City Council does not take action on the stipulation for settlement today, there will be no settlement agreement in place, and the litigation will continue.
Got it.
It would be up to this board to decide whether they wanted to take any further action, but the current stipulation for settlement would no longer be in place.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Jones,
Yes.
both board members have the document in their email. I just sent it.
Okay. Board Member Willie
Thank you, guys.
and Anderson, you both have emailed the information to both of you on the document that's before us today. Board Member Hershey.
So over the weekend, Ms. Young sent us each an email that had an attachment with updates, and I believe the language got rolled into the tax bill. And it did, one of the things that I was pleased with in that was that it did give some direction and stipulation about if a charter school received money and then closed, what was due back to the district. And that language does, it's on page 3 of the second document that Ms. Chastain shared with us. It does spell out the eligibility for charter schools, so at least there were some guidelines in that. I hope that everyone had a chance to read the update, but just from looking at this language that Ms. Chastain had pointed out that had been added, it does appear to me to fall in line with the information that came to us over the weekend from Ms. Young regarding language in that tax bill.
Right. Thank you for that information.
And I would just add that this language that you see in the resolution before you is the exact language from the state legislation.
Okay. Ms. Juarez.
Thank you. Through the chair to the superintendent, I suppose, first. The language and the amended language that Ms. Hershey referenced, just for purposes of the record and for understanding, the ability for the school board to recoup funds were a charter school to close only applies to funds that are unencumbered. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Ms. Meforez, that is my understanding.
So just for the public's understanding and for our understanding, if those funds are already encumbered, work will continue at those schools, even if the school were to close, or those funds would then be encumbered by whomever the vendor is. I can't say that work will necessarily continue, but those funds will be encumbered by the vendor, even if they haven't been expended at that time. So I just wanted to be clear in terms of what ability the school district would really have under this legislation to claw back funds were a charter school to close. Thank you.
I appreciate that clarification. I think that's very important, particularly for the public to know and to be aware of. And as everyone knows, we are beholden to the state law.
That's right.
And so it is the voice of the people that would be influential in making any adjustments to that. But for today, that is what it is, and I appreciate that clarification.
Yeah, thank you. That was going to be my next point, is that the voice of the public is very important in this conversation as we move forward. So please stay close to it. Through the chair to the superintendent and possibly to legal for bringing this information forward. The legislation has been passed by both bodies of the legislature. Has it been signed by the governor?
It's my understanding that it has not been signed and I asked that question earlier to superintendent. To the best of our knowledge, it has not been signed by the governor.
Okay, so, and I know this is unanticipated, but we're in some unanticipated times. Were the legislation not to be signed by the governor, which this is a tax bill, and so I understand the margin of possibility on that, but just kind of walking this through, were the legislation not to be signed by the governor, would the language that is here in Section F that states pursuant to the requirements of Section 212.055, paren 6, Florida statutes as amended by House Bill 7097, which is the tax bill legislation. So it's specifically stated here that this is pursuant to that legislation. So were that legislation not to be enacted as law, would we then be in a position, were the city council to move forward, to strike anything that would then not apply according to the law because Section F refers to the law? Am I asking that clearly, Ms. Chastain?
Through the chair to Board Member Smith Juarez, if this is drafted in anticipation of this becoming fully enacted, including signature by the governor. If for some reason that doesn't happen, I would recommend that the board adopt another resolution pulling out those things that did not happen.
Okay, thank you. And let me just state for the record now that I appreciate legal bringing this forward. I appreciate us taking advantage of the opportunity while City Council is meeting to amend this based on the presumption that this will be law. I also appreciate the specificity of Section F to that law so that if something were to change, that we could act accordingly. So I do think that we, in my opinion, are in the right posture to move forward with this, to get it in front of the City Council, to let them consider it today because time is of the essence. But I did want to point out that particular
possibility
thing. I don't want to give it a technical term. Possibility.
Right.
Thank you.
And I guess to follow up, if for some unknown reason the governor did not sign this requirement, would we still be required to share those dollars with charter schools if the council approves this resolution?
Well, I would agree with Ms. Chastain that it would be beneficial and much more clear if it came back to you to say we're striking the legislation because it wasn't approved. But you will do see that in the settlement agreement it says pursuant to the requirements.
Okay.
If it doesn't become law, there are no requirements to do that sharing. So I think you're protected in that regard, but I certainly agree with Ms. Chastain that it would be much clearer for everyone and for the public to just come back and say that since this did not get signed by the governor, we're going to go ahead and delete this. Our expectation, our information is that it will be signed by the governor.
Right. Okay. Any other questions? Board Member Willie Anderson, any questions? Hearing none.
No, thank you so much.
I didn't understand.
She said, thank you so
Oh,
much.
okay. Okay, I ask for a motion.
So move.
Moved by Board Member Hershey, second by Board Member Grimes. Any more discussion? If not, I call for your vote. Board Member Willie,
Yes.
Anderson, Vice Chair Anderson.
Yes. Yes.
We're not done on here. Can you put it up? I only have 50,000. I can do it. It's blanky. 97.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
For some reason, we have 3 board members that their vote is not popping up, so if we could get a vote from Ms. Joyce, Ms. Grimes, and Ms. Hershey.
Ms. Hershey, Board Member Joyce says yes. Ms. Hershey?
Yes.
Hershey says yes. Ms. Grimes?
Yes.
Yes.
What we don't get?
And we have 2 yes votes from Anderson and Willie. By your action, you've approved the sales tax update, 7-0. And let me say this on behalf of the board. We want to thank our attorneys, former Chair Hershey did an excellent job of picking what I call the dream team, and Ms. Moran, Mr. Cox, Mr. Cairns, and all the support staff. We really appreciate the hours and time you put in, especially 2 of you who are now retired, working on this project. We really appreciate it, and couldn't have got it done without your support and direction, and really appreciate it. And thank you very much on behalf of this board. And also a special thanks to our superintendent and her staff for presenting a bold plan. And I've been on, I grew up here in Jacksonville. I've been on elected office for a little over 30 years. And I've never seen a proposal that addresses our real needs in our community. And this board is to be commended too for standing fast and supporting it. And even though I'm sure, like you got pressure from folks to compromise, let's compromise and give them what they want. And this board stood strong in opposing that temptation to really address the real needs of this community and not for some other purpose. And it's sad that we've come to this day, and I'm saddened that we've come to a place in our community where we no longer address the real needs of this community, but we give in to the desires of those who have money, who are not educators, who don't understand the real unique issues that face our community at large. And thanks to the Civic Council who opposed the plan, thanks to the Chamber of Commerce because of their silence on the plan, thanks to City Hall for deferring the plan, that we are here now today giving them exactly what they wanted. And we're again diluting our effort to improve the quality of education for our students. We have 121 schools that are 50 years old or older. Schools, as everyone here knows, was built, all but 3 were built without air conditioning. All of them were built prior to the invent of the computer. And most importantly, they were built when schools had open campuses and anybody could enter the school. And we're in a day and age now where mass shootings are common. And we have to protect our children and our employees. And yet, we can't do as much as we need to do because we have to share on per pupil funding with charter schools. And when they called me in June and said, well, you got to give the charter schools $150 million up front, I said, well, no, I can't support that. I said, you can talk to somebody else, but I can't support it. But here we are today giving them exactly what they wanted. And it's sad that we can't do what's best for this community based on needs. And to Board Member Joyce, thank you for talking with Senator Stargell and explaining to her why this is not good. That was not good legislation. We appreciate that. And former Chair Hershey, thank you for your leadership over the last year in trying to get us to this point where we get on the ballot. But it was tough, and I see why we as a community still lead the state in murder rate, because we're not addressing the needs. And when you look at those charter schools that are located in some of our neediest areas, they're not outperforming neighborhood schools. They're not. So they have them 6 or 7 hours a day. So the problem is not what happens within the school walls, it's what's happening in those communities. And so we as a community, as a city, must begin to address the real needs of this community. And I thought, and I'm disheartened, I'm saddened that we cannot do that. That's the disappointment that I have, and I'm really saddened by that. And thank you, Superintendent, thank you, Board, for standing strong and doing what was needed for our community.
Hear, hear, Mr. Chairman.
Board Member Jones?
Yes.
Chair Jones?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I will iterate what you said. I wonder if there's an opportunity through the chair to the superintendent, based on the current sales tax projections, our expectation for how this sharing might impact us.
Through the chair to Board Member Anderson and the board, how this will impact us is that dollars that we had anticipated to be a part of the sales tax revenue, which, if you remember, we gave you 3 scenarios. There was the 80 million per year, 96 million per year, and 106 million per year. And in our proposal for charter schools, I think it came up to close to 70 million over a whole 15-year period. Now it could be upwards to 250 million over a 15-year period. Again, because it's based on per pupil, it's all about their enrollment. So that's what's going to impact the school district. And if those dollars are not coming to the school district, then we will need to use our millage dollars to fill the gap. So we were going to have to use millage dollars anyway, but now we will have to use more millage dollars to close up the gap, depending on how much we are bringing in. And now that we are in these unprecedented circumstances, 80 million starts to sound closer. If this continues, it will definitely impact the school district.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that as we continue to talk about this, we had early projections of looking at the sales tax revenue and hopeful that we would not have to make significant adjustments to the master facilities plans. Of course, in light of the current COVID-19 pandemic and the uncertainty of markets and spending that we may see over the next, who knows, year, 2 years, it makes it more concerning that we would not be able to realize the full revenue potential for our desperately needed infrastructure improvements. And so I appreciate that we are able to move forward with this. I appreciate, as Chairman Jones has pointed out, everyone's effort on working through Tallahassee this session, and of course last year with moving the referendum. But I am anxiously awaiting what will actually happen as we move forward, and I hope that we are able to make sure that the needs of our public schools and the students and families who attend those schools are able to be fully met so that we can take care of our community. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Hershey.
I would just like to kind of piggyback on a couple of things, and thank you, Chair Jones, for your comments. I would like to point out that the master plan really only calls for the rebuilding of the building of 2 new schools. The other 19 schools are rebuilds. And I think that that's a really important point, and we did not in the master plan do a lot for our middle schools. We are just beginning to see and feel the impact of the coronavirus, and while we all pray that it is not long-lasting and will soon go away, we do not yet know the full impact of the coronavirus. And so as that begins to hit our economy more, to our superintendent's point, though we planned at a conservative measure of $80 million, if there is a shortfall, that will have a greater impact and does have the potential to impact our master plan going forward, pending the impact on the economy.
So true. Thank you. Board Member Ashley.
Can I chime? Okay. Yep.
Ashley Smith Juarez, and then I'll come back to you, Mr. Willie.
Thank you,
Okay.
and really appreciate the comments of our chairman and others. I also would note that this is one step in a long process to getting the revenues that are desperately needed in this district. So while we know that there is some uncertainty that we have not charted previously, we also know that there are pending needs that have been needs in this community for a long, long time, for too long, as Chairman Jones pointed out. And so I would say that I am confident that as we send this resolution to council today, as this settlement agreement moves forward, that we will have a public who is able to cut through the noise and listen to the needs of our district, that we will have a public that will support us, even with the provisions that may become law as part of 7097, that are likely to become law as 7097, because sharing with charter schools, which means less for our public schools, still means that our public schools get much, much more than we are able to give them without this referendum. And so it is very important that as we move forward with this conversation, that the public knows that this school board, our superintendent, our city are being vigilant about what we can to protect our resources and protect our people, but that we also need this investment in our school system. We need this referendum to pass on the ballot in November for us to be able to realize the master plan that we have set forward and that we have always said would warrant consideration of revision as time moves forward, whether because of recession or because of economic prosperity and the ability to do more over the term of the resolution. So I appreciate the notes of our board today. I don't want it to be overlooked that we should have taken care of this in October, and we should be well on our way to planning and design and building for our children, and that should not be overlooked. At the same time, given where we are now and knowing where we are now, it is time to continue to press forward and get this referendum passed so that that design and planning and building can happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that reminder. Anything else? Oh, Board Member Willie.
Yeah, I just want to, to Board Member Ashley Smith Williams' point, that's what I was going to bring up. I mentioned before in a meeting, like, I think, what do we determine as a win and a loss? And at this point, if we're able to get this done and get the biggest amount of money poured into many schools and many areas of this community that's never been done, that's a win in my eyes. And we're living in probably the most political time ever. And for us to be able to, as a board, navigate all that, go through our ups and downs, and still be at this point where our kids, our students, and our staff and our faculty are going to reap the benefits of it at the back end, I'm excited about it. And I think we have to make sure that there are folks on either side when we were committing ourselves to making sure we wanted to get this passed that could go either way. We have to make sure we rally all the troops that are involved with this and make sure they know this is a huge positive for many, if not all of the schools and school districts within our area. So that's my key point. The other point is I think this COVID-19 piece is serious, and I think it will transform the way that schooling happens. And whether it's a big way or a small way, even now I had conversations with parents about, well, if I homeschool, I might just homeschool, forever homeschool, or do more virtual. So I think that is something that we have to keep in mind, and that's why I appreciate about our plan, being able to come back at chunks every 5 years or so to be able to look at that. It's going to be critical. We don't know what's going to happen. So I'm excited about where we are, excited about this board having the steadfastness to be able to kind of walk through all of this, and just thrilled to see where we are here in the next couple of years with our school. So just thank you for the leadership, former Chair Hershey and Chair Jones. Just your leadership has been really critical at this moment and in time, and I really appreciate being on this board right now.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Any other comments before we move to the next item? Next item is a waiver of Section 2C of School Board Policy 6.47, work year and work day. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Chairman Jones. That the School Board of Duval County, Florida waive Section 2.2C of School Board Policy 6.47, work year and work day through the end of the 2019-2020 fiscal year.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Motion by Board Member Hershey, second by Board Member Grimes. Discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. I call for your vote.
Wait,
Board Member Willie?
So this is, I don't have that many papers in front of me. So this is about, can we get the specifics of this or the details of this?
Madam Superintendent?
Through the chair to Board Member Willie, just as an FYI, we emailed the policy to you and Ms. Anderson. Policy 6.47 gives very clear direction on when employees can have an alternate work site or work assignment. It starts at 2C where it states alternate work assignments. There on page 2 of the policy, it talks about that it cannot exceed 5 business days. What we are experiencing at this time, we are working with each department, especially that works in the administration building, those that are in Team B, the parent resource. Our goal is to have that social distancing, and we probably cannot do it if everyone comes to work. It would just be impossible. And so we wanted to give each department that flexibility, and right now we're talking about alternate days. So maybe half the staff comes in on Monday, the other half works from home. On Tuesday, the staff that worked from home comes in, and the staff that was here works from home. Without waiving this policy, I would be in violation of the policy.
Got it, I'm looking at it now. So that is still going to be left up to the discretion of the management line, or is that going to be something that you sort of say A-Day, B-Day for folks, or is it still going to be slightly left up to the discretion of managers?
Through the chair to Board Member Willie, today each of the directors and above have to submit to me their plan, and so we will review all plans at the end of the day to ensure that, one, we're on the same page. We don't have one department too far outside from another department. We have some employees who have some health issues, and so we need to be cognizant of that. We really are trying to make sure everyone is safe, and at the same time, we still have our work that we have to get done to move the district forward.
Yep, I appreciate that clarity. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Board Member Willie.
One other comment.
Madam Superintendent.
Through the chair, through the board, I do want to share much of what we're talking about is for employees working at the district level. We have given guidance to our administrators at the school level to ensure that we are limiting people entering into our schools, even if we feel until the remainder of the school year. And parents, they will be sharing that, hey, parent conferences due by phone. If parents need to come to the school, limit their access to only to the front office. Encourage them that if they're coming to pick up, call ahead so that we can have the student up front waiting for them. So we are giving direction to not just district, but also out to our schools.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing and hearing none, I call for your vote. Board Member Willie,
Yes.
Board Member Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Chairman Jones, it looks like the same three board members are having problems with their voting. Ms. Grimes, Ms. Joyce,
Ms. Joyce, yes.
and
Ms.
Ms.
Grimes,
Hershey.
It's on there. Huh? I know, but oh, I'm sorry.
yes.
Yes.
Ms. Grimes, yes. Ms. Hershey,
Yes.
Ms. Hershey, yes.
And Ms. Joyce.
Ms. Joyce, yes. By your action, you've approved the waiver, 7-0. Thank the superintendent for that. Ms. Chastain.
Thank you, Mr. Jones, for recognizing me. I apologize for stepping out, but you've executed the resolution. Ms. Leonard certified it. I've emailed it to General Counsel's office as well as your lawyers, and I've sent documents with Ms. Miller to go over to the board meeting. So somebody had to get that ready, and that's why I stepped out.
Thank you very much. Governance, any discussion on governance? Ashley Smith Juarez.
Thank you. A couple of items, the most important of which I believe pertains to policy 2.25, school board rules, and section 3 of that policy. The school board may determine, which is actually what we're doing here this morning, the school board may determine that the public health, safety, or welfare is endangered and that immediate action is required to protect the public interest. When this occurs, the school board, at any meeting at which a quorum is present, may adopt emergency rules without complying with the waiting period as provided in section 1. I just wanted to note, because we are in unprecedented times, we're not certain what may happen with people's need to not be in public places. Through the chair to Ms. Chastain, do we have the ability to waive this particular section of the policy as it relates to emergency meetings and the presence of a quorum for a duration of time, were it specifically related to federal or local orders, so that the business of the school district can continue even if this board is not able to be physically present in the same room?
Through the chair to board member Smith Juarez, that's an excellent question that myself and my peers are looking at throughout the state. It's not clear that the executive order declaring the state emergency suspended these requirements or not. It's something that all of us are looking at, but right now we don't have a clear answer on that. Even if there were relief as to allowing purely telephone participation meetings are some of the questions that are being asked of the executive branch as well in its authority. But as it stands right now, I don't think we're there yet.
Okay, so we may not be there in terms of because this, right, and I guess we should make the point, this trickles down from state rule around public meetings and that type of thing. But because this is incorporated into our policy and doesn't refer specifically to the state rule, would it be prudent for us while we're here this morning to waive that rule, understanding that our waiver may be superseded by state law, right? But if we get in a situation where state law is suspended or otherwise waived, specific to this meeting rule, would we want to already be in a posture that we've waived our own school board policy?
Through the chair to Board Member Smith Juarez, that particular policy actually comes out of state statute and Chapter 120, so I don't know that that would be what I would rely upon. As far as keying in on the adoption of emergency rules and things like that, I think what would be more relevant to continued operations would be the scope and extent of what comes out of the declaration of emergency and what's specifically waived, and then all of us proceed from there. I don't know that policy 2.25, I think it was section 3, is the key to what I think you're looking for. I don't think that's the path.
Okay. So you're thinking that if there is a state waiver, that would
take care of everything we need to do, and our
also
policies
trickle,
would
okay.
not be inconsistent with that. Everything would be suspended. It's a good question, though.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't get into a situation where the superintendent, staff, other, district business could not be conducted because the board didn't have safe ability to act. So thank you for that. The only other question that I have as it relates to governance through the chair to the superintendent, I know you mentioned encouraging phone activity for parents with schools. What is your advice? What is our advice to the public as it relates to visiting the district office, even those school-based employees who may not have a district-based assignment, but may have business to conduct with the district?
Through the chair to Ms. Smith Juarez and the entire board, today we are working on that protocol. It will probably be very similar to what we're saying for our schools. Limit your access to the district office. First call, because many times we can solve your issue if you just call us, and we can work through that. We do need to, if we're remaining open and we're still doing the business of the district, we will have to allow some entrance into the building. And the reason I say that is, even though we're saying call first, if we have a number of people working at home, phone lines have an opportunity to, we got to get to the phone call. So we're working through that today, and by the end of the day, we will have our protocols ready to go, whether it's for school or district, and we'll, as we've been communicating with our staff, make sure that everyone is aware about what we're doing.
Okay. So is it safe to say that for now, if folks have business to conduct with a school or at the district office, please just hold off until we can define what is essential, what's non-essential, what can wait, and what is essential to the business of the school district?
Yes, and we've made some determinations about what's essential, what we're going to wait on. We just want to get it all in writing and shared with everyone.
No, that's fair. I really want to say a huge thanks and appreciation to the board, to the superintendent, to the cabinet, to staff. Everyone is doing everything that they can to keep up to speed on an evolving situation that is unpredictable. We do want essential functions to continue. We want people to follow the guidelines of the CDC for hand washing, for distancing, for doing what they can to remain safe in an interactive environment. And so, just wanted to have some clarity and also ask for some patience from folks, as we know that lots of people have questions. We know that lots of people are getting information and advice from a variety of different sources. I, myself as a board member, would really encourage folks to validate the sources of information where they're coming. Make sure that you are listening to public health officials, the Surgeon General, the CDC, and doing what you can to maintain what you need for your own quality of life and the quality of life of those around you, and doing the things that we know are proven to reduce communicable disease without having to unnecessarily disrupt public life. Thank you.
Thank you, well said, and thank you for making sure that the folks here on Saturday had a nice snack. That was very thoughtful of you, and we appreciate that. It was your idea.
Can I
Board Member Willie?
Yeah, I have a question, sort of a follow-up to that. I know we have onboarding and hiring and stuff happening too. Is that still going on as scheduled, or are we postponing that? How are we going about doing that? And then I have one other follow-up question.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
He wanted to know if we still are onboarding or going through the process of hiring individuals that we had approved.
Through the chair, again, that's another decision that we have made, and we're wanting to put everything in writing today. This week we only had scheduled seven individuals for onboarding, which 2 of those individuals relate to the board office. So we are doing those 7. Those 7. But we will be limiting onboarding greatly from this point forward.
Great. The other thing that I would say is I think it's important to have our leadership be able to lead, and also just trying to figure out like how are the superintendent and the cabinet, you all making sure that you all are being as safe as possible, because you all are in the trenches and whatnot, and like if you all have to quarantine or whatnot, that's just going to cause even more of a wrench in it all. So just wanted to make sure, kind of just encourage that somehow. I don't even know how that works, but wanted to make sure that you all are staying safe and distancing when you can and whatnot to make sure you all are staying healthy in the midst of it all.
Through the chair to Board Member Willie, we are taking very good care of ourselves. Cabinet is taking very good care of themselves. We meet all the time, and we're not there in person. So we have multiple ways that we are communicating with one another. 7 this morning, we had a phone conference. I don't know how much we've used our conferencing system in the past, but we've used it more in the last week probably than you've used in the last 5 years. So we are really working hard to work smarter and be diligent in making sure that we're supporting one another.
That's fantastic. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Board Member Hershey?
I just wanted to share with everyone, and Board Member Smith-Morris kind of pointed out some of the conversation this morning. This morning at 8 o'clock, I was on a conference call with the Florida School Board Association. Just wanted to share some information. It was an hour conference, but I'm not going to give you an hour update. I just have a few highlights. Board Member Smith-Morris pointed out one of the topics of conversation, which was the question of the Sunshine Law that requires a physical presence of a quorum, and that is a question that's being asked to the governor, and so they are working on getting us the answer to that question, but that did come up. Thank you for bringing that up. Some of the topics of conversation, just to update the board about conversations that the Florida School Board Association is having with leadership in Tallahassee, is the broadband capacity that would be needed in the event of distance learning, as well as addressing any flexibility with graduation and end of course exams, discussing the ACT, SAT test, the AP testing, those kinds of questions are being addressed. Also, one of the topics that came up was the question of how districts will provide professional development in the event that online learning is an option. There was discussion about the potential staff shortage. Also conversation about potential shortfalls of hourly wages for our workers who are our hourly wage workers. One of the other topics of conversations that we have already had some conversation around this dais about was we are customer service centered and people are used to coming to us and encouraging the public to really begin to make use of emails and phone calls, and it sounds like Dr. Green and her team are on top of addressing this. I just wanted also to share that Clay County set up a hotline. I know we have a website, but Clay County set up a hotline that people can call into. Do we?
We have a hotline.
We also have a hotline. So if we
Yes,
could
and
share that number.
It's been going across the TV screen.
Okay,
on the
all right,
banner.
it'd be good for us
We-
all
we
to
do,
tweet and
yes.
remember
We
to
do
have
have a
people they
hotline.
can go online. There was another district that I just wanted to share real quick that used buses as hotspots that went into neighborhoods. I don't know what that looks like, but just to give you an overview, I wanted to share about that conversation this morning, just so that everyone knows that the School Board Association is working to get some of these answers to questions that we're all asking.
All right, thank you. And I guess one issue that we need to discuss is whether we need to move the next board meeting back and the workshop. If we're not having any meetings this week, and I don't think we should, then do we meet next week in board workshop to go over the agenda, or do we wait and move the board meeting back so we can make sure we are not causing folks to gather at a meeting of this board? Any thoughts?
Through the chair to Ms. Chastain, I know we vote on the meeting dates at the beginning of the year. To change a meeting date, forgive me for not remembering, but does the chair have the discretion to do that within a regular meeting? I know the state statute just requires that we meet once a month.
Correct. Through the chair to Board Member Smith Perez, that is correct. I can't remember, though, if changes were delegated to the chairman or not. But it would be nice to know, frankly, what we're doing with the April 7th board meeting, because a lot of preparation goes into that. And I don't know that we know right now, one way or the other, whether we're back in business in April. But maybe it makes sense to reschedule certain things at this point, given what we know now.
I would be fine with rescheduling, with the caveat of asking the superintendent if there are any pivotal items scheduled to be on that agenda that would disrupt essential business were we not to convene.
We have pivotal items that we may have to come to the board to say we need to waive this because we said we'd have it due, and now because of what we're dealing with, we can't do it. So we may need to move it to May. That is what we would need. I'm sorry, excuse me, through the chair to Ms. Smith Flores.
Okay.
No, say that, I'm sorry.
I don't understand.
We have 3 items that we indicated would be voted on in April. But there are things that need to happen at these schools, meetings. Well, we may not be able to have those meetings. We may have to move those meetings to April. Therefore, we can't vote on it in April. We need to vote on it in May. That's
The ACE meeting.
the ACE meeting.
Yes.
That's what's,
That was.
okay. So I should have just said it plainly instead of speaking in code.
So through the chair to the board, though, I don't know if that would have been ready by April 7th or not. So does it make sense to reschedule your regular meeting on April 7th to a different date in April, and then just play it by ear with a little bit more time, because April 7th is 3 weeks away.
Yeah.
And I just, given how things are going, I don't know what 3 weeks away looks like.
How, could I ask a question? You mentioned that City Council President Scott Wilson had canceled city council meetings. Was that to the first part of April?
Yes, the city council meeting, committee meetings for this week were canceled. Council meeting 2 weeks from tomorrow has been canceled. There's a fifth Tuesday, which they have no meeting, so their first meeting would be the, looking at the calendar now, committee meeting would
Committees would
start on
start
April
April
the
6th.
6th.
Yes.
And the first council meeting would be April the 14th.
Would it be wise for this board to follow suit and cancel our meetings for March? Or should we meet, anyway, next week? Because we've got, I mean, to your point, to the agenda meeting, is that something that, are those?
I guess we could play it by ear to see what happens. If school remains closed this week and we decide, the superintendent decides to close it another week, or the state mandates it, then we probably should not meet next week either. So I guess we'd have to wait till later on this week.
Yeah, I would agree with Ms. Hershey's recommendation that maybe we suspend meetings for March, just understanding that even if the superintendent and staff and medical, at the advice of medical professionals, decide that it's safe to open schools next week, and is the best thing to open schools next week, staff is going to be focused on opening schools, new process and procedure, communications. So I would think that we would want to resume if there's no essential business of the board, save the waivers, which I think we can handle, that we would resume business in April. What we'll have to work through with the superintendent is what does that mean in terms of agenda stacking, because then we'd basically be doing the April meeting and agenda, were we to move that to the 28th, I'm just saying because it's the last Tuesday in April, we may do it the 27th if that overlaps with the council meeting. But we just have to work through what does that agenda look like, and how does staff prepare essentially for 2 meetings at a time if we're not also moving the May meeting. But I would be fine to suspend and
all
move
meetings
things
for
forward.
the month of March.
I think it's important for us too, because Dr. Green, I think, mentioned more than one time that emails have been sent out, so we need to be diligent as well to pay attention to any emails coming from the superintendent and staff, or text messages to stay updated, knowing that even though we're not meeting, we may still be getting information that we may have questions about or want to respond to, so it's up to us to pay attention to that information coming across.
Yeah, I would agree with postponing meetings in March. I think it sets the precedent's been set, and I think we can set an example too for folks to not feel like they need to gather and meet to kind of reduce the spread of this.
Madam Superintendent?
Through the chair to the board, and Karen, I'm really asking a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We actually may need 2 board meetings in April.
That's what I'm thinking.
We caught this policy. I don't know how many other policies we might need to bring, and if we wait to the end of April, it's just going to be, I don't want to openly say we'll be violating policy, but if the emergency arises, we're going to do what we need to do. So
Through the chair, if I may, and to address Dr. Green's statements, in my mind, if everything is suspended and there are no more meetings, workshops, meetings, whatever you want to call it, in the month of March, I think it necessitates moving the April board meeting back later in April. And in my mind, as things catch up, we may have more frequency of formal meetings than once per month, just to catch up. Like, at the end of April, there might be 2 in May. You know, we might have to kind of smooth things out on the back end, given what's being deferred. I don't really know what that looks like yet, but the volume of work is the same. It's just going to be compressed to a later date when, you know, we're on the other side of flattening the curve and we're through this and we can resume some semblancy of normal operations. If you were to ask me for specific recommendations, obviously I don't know. I don't think that's knowable right now, but I think conceptually preparing ourselves for meeting a little bit later in April, if we're able to do so, hopefully that will be the case. And then we will have a better idea, to Dr. Green's point, how frequently we need to meet formally, not in a workshop setting, to keep the business going. Remember, school boards often meet twice a month. We moved to a monthly cycle some time ago. We may need to resume briefly a twice-a-month schedule just for continuity, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's uncertain times.
Chair Jones?
Yes, Board Member Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you. I'm find myself thinking about what is the potential for maybe conference or distance opportunities to meet. I believe it's state statute that requires the quorum to be present, and so I'm curious about what directive would need to come from where. Perhaps Ms. Chastain can answer, so that we might be able to conduct business without being present in the same room.
Through the chair to Vice Chairman Anderson, that's a great question, and specifically, I was vague before when I spoke about my colleagues around the state. We're specifically asking that question of Tallahassee and looking for a specific waiver of that requirement. There is state law that allows state agencies to teleconference without a quorum present, but specifically that doesn't apply to local boards, with the idea being that we're in close proximity and we can travel. So we're looking for relief, you know, from that legal requirement. I don't want to be overly picky about the requirements, but I also don't want to invalidate what we do. So that's one specific question that has gone to Tallahassee on the wish list of specific issues to address.
To Ms. Chastain, is there a difference between like a meeting where we're voting versus a workshop meeting? Is there a little bit more leeway in those to be virtually together?
Through the chair to Board Member Willie, possibly. I mean, it hasn't been applied in that case before, but if there's no formal action taken, no vote, you know, what's the harm? But certainly I'm thinking in terms of a vote, a formal decision. Presently, that's not where the law is, but the law didn't contemplate these circumstances, so that's what we're looking for relief.
So, Mr. Chairman, just
Thank you.
Ms. Juarez?
to, forgive me, to kind of, I don't know, round out the conversation, does it make sense to suspend regular meetings until 27th, 28th of April, whatever the case is? But if an emergency meeting needs to be called, such as this morning, so suspending regular meetings not to preclude emergency meetings with a need for emergency action. That way, you know, the superintendent and yourself can determine if there's a health, safety, welfare issue that we need to do business on.
What about special meetings? Which is a 48-hour notice.
Yeah, either.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a recommendation that we don't need to vote on that. I think that would be a prudent direction that we need to follow. Do we need to vote on that?
It would be nice if you
I
did.
second it.
Okay. Motion, thank you. Motion by Board Member Smith Juarez, second by Board Member Hershey. Any discussion? If not, I call for your vote.
Chairman Jones,
Yes.
what will the motion be? I have to add it.
I I move that the school board of Duval County suspend regular meetings until the
Last week of April.
last week of April. Thank you, I didn't have my calendar up. Not to preclude special meetings or emergency meetings called by the chair of the board.
Okay, if you could just give me a minute to add that. Thank you, Ms. Juarez.
You're anticipating all of this month and all of next month, except for special meetings and emergency meetings. You said April the 30th. That's why I want to make sure.
27. I said regular meetings to mean our regular school board meeting. I think we determined earlier that workshops are really outside of the scope of what we're talking about in meetings that would include board action.
Okay.
Correct. Also, I think what Board Member Smith Juarez's motion addresses is that workshops can be canceled. They're not required by statute. And then it would also give us time to explore if a workshop is necessary, informational or something like that, where no vote is taken, to handle that electronically. In other words, to come up with a means by which you can receive information and still comply with the law. That would have to include some means for the public if they wanted to dial in to listen as well.
But I think to the chairman's point that we're the chair to keep a workshop that's already scheduled on the agenda, that kind of a committee meeting, that type of thing, that this motion would not preclude those things from happening or an additional workshop being added. If we see that curve drop quickly, which we all hope it does, then we could resume those workshop meetings.
Right.
And just not have another regular meeting until the end of April.
Yes.
I'm looking at the two of you because that sounds like it has a period at the end of that sentence, but it's
Wanna make
really
sure
a
I'm clear.
question mark.
So you're saying suspending all regular meetings to the end of April, except for emergency and workshops. And we can do
Except for special meetings, which would have 48-hour notice, or emergency meetings as called by the chair. But that wouldn't apply to the workshop format, which is more informal.
We can do that through teleconferencing. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So the motion would be that the Duval County School Board suspend all regular school board meetings in the month of March, not to preclude emergency meetings called by the chair
Until the last week.
Till the last week of April.
until the last week of April.
Emergency meetings and special.
And special meetings,
And
emergency and special. You're just not having a regular meeting until the end of April.
And for the board's information while we're waiting, apparently the city council is not meeting today.
Oh.
Wow, when are they meeting? Next.
I figure that might happen. Like half of me is self-isolate.
I'm sorry, I said again, Board Member Willie.
So I figured that might happen with city council, considering many of them interact with the two that potentially have come into contact. So, I have to self-isolate or have issues getting a quorum.
Yeah, because I don't think they've gone through the process of sanitizing the council chambers, anything of that nature.
Through the chair, I think the motion as typed will say that the Duval County School Board suspend all regular meetings until the last week of April 2020, which however does not preclude scheduling special or emergency meetings. Is that the motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Second that again. Clear.
And according to Ms. Miller, they are meeting, but they're not voting. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct. They're meeting telephonically, but they will not be voting on measures today.
All right, thank you.
So what do we do?
Well,
We'll see.
just have to see.
I think what your attorneys told you is that you put yourselves to be ready and you were willing and able to perform, and you did,
We're compliant.
within the time frame.
Yes.
We comply to the agreement.
And I'm sorry to step into their shoes, but I think that's what they would tell you.
And we want to keep the community in prayer, especially those who are been diagnosed with coronavirus. And City Council Member Newby has been a lot of places, and I just pray that he self-quarantined himself.
Well, he is in the hospital, it's my understanding, and then Councilman Randy White visited him, and he is self-quarantining. So that could be part of the reason for the city council meeting by phone. It's just a guess.
We need
Mr. Jones, could we ask for the two board members on the telephones vote?
Vice Chair Anderson, your vote?
Yes.
Board
Yes.
member Willie, your vote?
Yes.
And Ms. Hershey, you have voted.
Oh. Thank you. I did now. Sorry about that.
I actually have adopted the resolution 7-0. Anything else to come before the board? Seeing none, thank you, be safe, keep your distance from strangers, and we'll see you at the next meeting, whenever that might be.
Do we need to
Meeting's
move?
Can I
adjourned.
ask one more question? I'm so sorry. Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
It's got a couple questions about the food service. That is awesome, by the way, that we're doing at each of our schools, and really expanded it to middle schools. Someone asked if students are sort of latchkey kids and don't have access to walk to get a meal. Is there anything that we can do for that, as far as students not being able to, maybe having a representative from their neighborhood going to pick it up for kids in the neighborhood? Just asking that question. That came up a couple times in conversation this past couple days.
Through the chair to Board Member Willie, we are not allowed to give food to adults, even if they say they're going to take, the student has to be present to receive a meal.
Okay. That's okay.
We're using our summer feeding guidelines. That's why it doesn't, we can serve food to students from, it doesn't matter what school they attend, charter, private, they can receive a lunch and a snack. the, the one rule that's in those guidelines is that the child must be present.
Got it. Okay. Okay, I'll relay that message.
You know, we'll
Thank
see.
you.
We'll see how tomorrow, what happens tomorrow. You know, we're a very creative group of individuals, and we feel like there's something else we can do. We will work to get to do that.
Love it. Well, let me know how I can help on that. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Anything else?
Mr. Jones, do we have a first and a second for the adjournment?
Move for adjournment.
Second.
Oh. Motion by Board Member Hershey, second by Board Member Smith Morez to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like action. Meeting's adjourned. Well, we did all that.
We now join our regularly scheduled program already in progress.